I'm very happy to have Professor Ed Barbier here on today's Experts Views. Ed Barbier is a University Distinguished Professor in the Department of Economics at Colorado State University. His main expertise is in environmental and resource economics, and he also works on many other topics such as international environmental policy, biodiversity, nature. There isn't much that he didn't touch upon in this wide field. He also consulted for quite a variety of national, international, non-governmental bodies and organizations, including the UN, UNEP, World Bank, the OECD. Well, he has authored, I would say, over 300 peer-reviewed journal articles, 25 books. That's an impressive number, I have to say. Congratulations on this true achievement.
Thanks, Ingmar. I appreciate it.
How are you today?
I'm very well, thanks. Beautiful day here in Colorado.
Great. We need more of these.
Yes.
So the Experts Views, as you may know, they work like a snowball fight. I throw a question at you, and you just throw the first answer that gets into your mind back at me. Are you ready for this ordeal?
Let's go for it.
Could you please briefly introduce yourself?
So my name's Ed Barbier. I'm the University Distinguished Professor in the Department of Economics at Colorado State University in the United States. And I'm also a senior scholar in the School of Global Environmental Sustainability, also at Colorado State University.
What do you view as the most challenging aspect of being a professor these days?
COVID-19 and the aftermath. It's been a tough 2 years because we've had to switch to teaching online, including supervising graduate students, which also involves research. It's also meant that meetings that would normally be face-to-face, in person, are all online. International travel's been restricted, and a lot of my work has involved international environmental policy issues, and I need often to meet with people, and it's a challenge to do it online all the time, although we've learned to make it work.
Yeah, COVID is definitely the challenge during the past years.
Yes.
What is your favorite article in environmental economics?
Well, the article, I have lots of favorite articles stretching many years, but the one that I have gotten my students to read the most lately has been Rick van der Ploeg's 2011, I believe, Journal of Economic Literature article, in which it's called Resource Curse or Blessing, or something like that. And basically, I get the students to read it because I think, first of all, it's a wonderful scholarship, as Rick is known to do, but it's a literature review, plus it's got some theory in it, and it has some empirical exploration as well, all in one nice little bundle. So I like to get my students to read that, and I still like to read it. And I think I do it as an example of scholarship, also covering a field that I think is important. And that's the one I get the most out of, and get my students to think about the most, I think.
And there I thought I knew all of Rick's articles. Shame on me.
Well, yeah, he's amazing.
I have to read that. What book should every environmental economist have read?
Again, there's tons of good books out there. The one that I have gotten the most inspiration with from my own work over the years has to have been Colin Clark's Mathematical Bioeconomics. I know it's rather dated now. It was first published, I believe, in 1978 or 9, and then it was a second edition later on. But it I think, provides the foundation for a lot of bioeconomic natural resource modeling, which I have found really important for my work, and I still use it from time to time.
Yet another book I have to add to my list. Thank you.
Yeah.
What do you think is your biggest contribution to environmental economics?
Oh, that's an interesting one because I've covered a lot of things. From a policy side, I think keeping the whole green economy concepts going and policies going. In 1989, David Pierce and Neil Marcanti and I published Blueprint for a Green Economy, and we're still playing off that book. It's the playbook that is for green economy, and keeping that debate going. And how do we do policies to green our economies? And sadly, it's not finished work, and it keeps going. I'm proud of that contribution. I'm also proud of my contribution of including ecosystems and ecosystem services as a form of capital. I think that has linked up ecosystems and nature as a form of wealth, and getting that recognized. I'm very proud of being part of that contribution. If you get nature as a form of wealth, then certainly we can fit it into our models of whether they're dynamic models, bioeconomic models, or whether it's just our concept of wealth and supporting economic activity. And so that's also something I'm very proud of having contributed to.
Yeah, I think that's the right point. This is also what Partha Gupta has recently emphasized in his review.
Right. I have a long association with Partha that goes back to, he was a big influence on me. When I was a master's student at London School of Economics, I took his course. He was a very young professor at the time, and he had just written the book on economics of exhaustible resources with Geoffrey Hill, which is another influential book that everyone should read. And Partha basically, from that time on, has been a big influence on me.
Just a quick trivia. I also did my my master at the LSE.
Yes.
But you did it in the year that I was born. So
yeah, well, yeah. Thanks, Igmar, for reminding me. Yeah, it's been a long time, and we can talk about that. I mean, back in those days, there was no environmental resource economics taught at LSE, and so I took a development course from Partha, and in fact, that was my interest. I was not particularly thinking of myself as an environment resource economist, but I took that course from Partha, and at the end, he brought in the natural resources side, and I had worked in developing countries, grown up in them, and so I was really suddenly I saw the connection there that he was talking about, although his book was focusing on. His book with Geoffrey Hill was focusing on an exhaustible resource constraint on the economy or not, but it had implications for what I was thinking about, and so it was really important for me to suddenly say, we can be in a development course and think about the environment. That's what I've been thinking about, but it didn't seem to have a place in economics. So now, of course, I hope when you did your LSE masters that there was some environmental economics.
Yes, there was some, but it was still in its infantry, I would say.
Okay.
What do you think is the most pressing environmental problem, and how can it be solved?
Global environmental risks. Those are the most pressing problems, and I've been writing quite a lot about those lately. Obviously, there's climate change, but I would suggest there's three others that are important. One is loss of natural habitat or land use change and biodiversity loss. The third is deterioration of coastal and marine environments. And the fourth is water scarcity. And I just written a book called Economics for a Fragile Planet. It's for Cambridge University Press, and it's coming out in March. And I basically argue the case that we need to take these global environmental risks seriously, and this is how economics should do it. And so I think those are the most pressing environmental problems, the big global environmental risks we face that require collective action.
And you also wrote about this in your recent book, The Water Paradox. So
yeah, that was a book that I was commissioned by Yale University Press to write. because they said, no one's really, there's been a lot of books on water and about the pressing problem of water, but nobody has really focused on it globally as an economic problem. And they asked me to do it. And I thought, foolishly, that this is something I should try and do, because I'm not particularly a water economist, but I've thought a bit about water scarcity and done some work on that. And so I took this on. It took me about 4 or 5 years to write. But I think I have the right message there. It's a complex problem, but it's one that definitely needs to think about underpricing of water, as well as institutions and governance and how they affect incentives and innovation and investments. And that was really pivotal for me to think about. My current book that's going to come out also talks about water, but I think from working on water and other issues in biodiversity and nature, I think I see the same problems coming up time and time again, our ways in. And so I'm trying to get our thinking in economics to encompass these global environmental risks, and also what they mean for business, because I also in this book focus a little bit on the role of business, because I think it's not all about governments. It's also about markets and business, and increasingly there's movement of business and finance taking global environmental risks seriously and treating them as financial risks that are here and now. And I think that's our way in. That's how I view it.
If you could be the Secretary of the Treasury or the Administrator of the EPA of the USA, what would you want to change and why?
Well, in the United States, I don't think the EPA administrator could do this, but certainly someone in Treasury, Janet Yellen, could have this influence. I'd bring in carbon pricing. It's serious in the United States that we do not have a price on carbon. I know why we don't, because of all the vested interests and lobbying and the nature of our political system. But if I had the power to do it, I'd bring in carbon pricing. That would be my first step. And then the second thing I would do would be to think about other areas of underpricing of nature, and particularly water, how we could deal, because there's a serious issue, a growing issue of water scarcity, drought, particularly in the West where I live, Western United States. And we need to start thinking seriously about methods of dealing with it beyond just dealing with crises as they pop up. So carbon pricing is urgent in the US, and I think dealing with water scarcity, particularly in the West, is also important. The third thing is coastal resilience. On the Gulf Coast and Atlantic Coast, we're not taking seriously the threat of storms, growing intensity, frequency of storms and their impacts. And we're not particularly taking into account a holistic approach. In certain areas we are. In the Gulf of the United States, Louisiana has this 50-year plan, which I helped work on coastal resilience, which involves both natural infrastructure such as wetlands, as well as physical gray infrastructure such as dams and dikes, as a way of protecting the coast. But I think we need to do that up and down the coast of the Gulf and, well, the Atlantic seaboard, because this is a real threat. Sea level rise combined with more intense and frequent storms and the damages they're doing and the loss of lives too. So those are the three things.
So in addition to a carbon price, will a price on nature make our world more sustainable?
It would. So again, going back to my recent book on economics for a fragile planet, we chronically underfund nature, but we also underprice it. And so I believe strongly that if we're talking about embedding our economies in nature, then we have to more seriously take into account the value of nature in our market and business and policy decisions. And unfortunately, we do the opposite. We treat nature as if it's a free good, which it is in a sense that we don't provide it. Nature, is an endowment to us, but that doesn't mean we should give it a zero price, because we actually have huge values attached to many of the benefits or services of nature. But in our main commercial policy decisions, we effectively give it a zero price. And in fact, we go one step worse. And that's something that I've been arguing for some time, is that we subsidize activities that are harmful to nature. So we actually give it a negative price. And you can look in every sector: fossil fuels, agriculture, water, transport, name your sector, fishing. Every sector has got destructive, environmentally harmful activities that are subsidized. And the OECD and the IEA, the International Energy Agency, and others, the International Monetary Fund, fortunately are now producing estimates of how much these subsidies are and how much are environmentally harmful. And we know this. We know how much we're generating. It's in agriculture, it's over $100 billion a year is environmentally harmful subsidies. In fossil fuels, just consumption subsidies, are $300 to $400 billion a year. But if you add in other subsidies, you can get close to $1 trillion a year globally. So there's all these numbers that we have, and that's good, but we still haven't done anything to deal with it. So removing these environmentally harmful subsidies, and then also pricing nature beyond that with taxes, incentives, regulations, I think that's essential if we want to embed our economies in nature.
We'll be discussing about a price on nature later in the main interview.
Okay.
But I couldn't agree less. Now, given the recent developments that we have seen, are you optimistic or pessimistic about us being able to tackle the world's environmental problems?
That's a tough one to answer. I'm mixed, to be honest. I go through periods where I'm more optimistic. Then there's others where I'm less optimistic. Right now, I'm less optimistic, only because of time. We have this critical period between 2020 and 2030, this next 10 years, I think, where we have to make substantial progress on those four things I talked about, not just climate change, but nature and biodiversity loss, deterioration of our marine and coastal environments, and water scarcity. This is a critical period. That's why I'm still in this game. I can't afford to retire. I got to keep the ball rolling on this. I feel very strongly. And whether people listen to me, well, they haven't listened for 35 years, so I'm not optimistic they will, but I want to. Now, that's on my positive, more optimistic side. I think there is more listening done by business and finance than ever before. So if I see a difference between 10, 15, 20 years ago, it's that the business world, and particularly finance, are realizing that business risks, financial risks, and environmental risks are intertwined now. And they want something to do, and they have the power to do things. It's just a question of time, whether we can keep moving.
Let's go slightly different. Which environmental economist do you admire the most?
Oh, it's got to be Partha Dasgupta. One, I've known him my whole career. I mean, he started as a master's at LSE, and he was the most influential professor that I had then. And then he was the external examiner on my PhD, and then we've been involved in meetings, discussions, and we've never written a paper together. Oh, actually, we have written a letter in science we wrote together, but we don't necessarily collaborate, but we're always talking, and we routinely talk. What I admire about Partha is that this guy has revolutionized theory of natural resource use, and he's done it many times. I mean, and he's gotten many, but he's also moved to thinking about beyond just, let's say, exhaustive resource problems or whatever, to man's role in humankind's role in nature and the economy's role in nature. And his latest Dasgupta review of biodiversity economics, I think, is really good. And so I admire him because he's moved, broadened, and gone on. So, and then kudos to Ken Arrow too, because I think Ken Arrow was a big influence on Partha. The late great Ken Arrow. I would not call Ken Arrow an environmental economist, but I have to mention him because he's been influential, hugely influential on me. But I know that he's really also shaped and encouraged part of this direction as well.
Yeah, those are two big names. So with whom would you then like to write your next article?
Oh, well, I like writing articles with PhD students, with graduate students, but and I'm doing that right now. But the article I'm writing at the moment that I'm enjoying writing is with a fellow economist at Colorado State University. He's not in my department, he's in our sister department of agriculture and resource economics, and that's Dale Manning. And Dale and I are writing an article which I've always wanted to do, and Dale really wanted to do it, persuaded him to join me on this, which is looking at what's the impact of including natural capital when to account for growth in growth accounting exercise. So what we mean by that is can you explain changes in per capita income over time better or worse when you add in natural capital as opposed to leave it out, which is what current growth accounting exercises do. And we're getting some really interesting stuff out of this, and it sort of fits with a lot of past work I've done. So I'm really excited about this article. We presented it for the first time, or Dale presented it, and we got some interesting feedback. And so we're still working on it. That's the one I'm most excited about at the moment.
So very much in the line of genuine savings.
Not so much genuine savings, but it has implications for genuine savings, and also for inclusive wealth, in a sense of it's in that bracket. And in particular, work that, going back to Partha and myself, the idea of thinking about including natural capital depreciation. So you're working on net national product rather than gross domestic product or gross net national product, and accounting for the depreciation doesn't matter. We're not so much doing that, but we are seeing that by including natural capital, it does have some impact on growth accounting for certain types of economies, and their dependence on natural resources is really important. So it's a really interesting way of tackling some problems that others have done.
Well, I want to read that. So thank you already.
Well, I want to finish writing it first. Yeah, we will send it to you. Yes.
We're nearly done. One last question I have for you in stock. If you could spend 1 hour with a person of your choice, who would it be and why?
Probably Barack Obama, off the top of my head, because I think the guy is really fascinating. First of all, his life story is amazing. Second, I think he just strikes me as a really empathetic, nice guy. And I don't think he'd spare an hour to spend time with me. But I think I think I would be pleasantly surprised by how much he understands a lot of the things that I care about. And hopefully, his background is law. Obviously, he's been president of the United States and a world leader. But I think that even though I think he actually understands, I think that early on in his presidency, I felt he didn't really understand economics. I thought by the end he got it. And now I think he's really, his speech at the climate change conference, COP26, I think showed to me he gets it, that we have limited time to deal with a whole range of global problems. And I think it'd be a really interesting time to talk to him and see with him what he can do with all of his influence and power. Where's he thinking next? Where can he have the most leverage? Even though he's retired now, he still has so much influence in the world. So that's who I'd like to spend time with.
Okay, so let me say this, Barack Obama, if you are looking at this episode, you should call up Ed Barbier. I can give you his number, or you can send him a mail, but don't hesitate to spend an hour with him, please.
Yes, and we will enjoy having Ingmar join us too for a couple beers. That's the other thing. Barack likes to drink a beer or two, I understand, so it'd be fun.
Now we have something in common. Ed, thank you very much. I really enjoyed those super interesting answers of yours. I invite those who would like to get more details about Ed, his research, his work in general, to take a closer look at his website and Also my top environmental economics interview series, which you can find online. Ed, thank you so much for having been here today. It was a true pleasure.
Thanks, Ingmar. I really enjoyed it, and thanks for inviting me.